Let me have a Diablo sandwich, a Dr. Pepper, make it fast. I'm in a goddamn hurry.
You must be in a hell of a hurry, huh, Sheriff?
Bet your ass on that, boy.
Oh, you got those mess there. Let me help you out here. Get that off there. That's away from an officer.
Much obliged.
Who are you chasing? Somebody chasing you?
Nobody's chasing me, boy. I've been chasing a goddamn maniac all the way from Texarkana, Texas.
Really? Was he a bank robber?
Bank robbing his baby kid alongside of what this dude is doing.
Yeah.
Almost killed a funny law officer. Driving through people's backyards, knocking down mailboxes. Got a broad in the car, took him across the state line, got the man out. I don't think he's got a permission, and that's getting him. How's that behind this?
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. This is Ruined Childhoods. If you are looking for a podcast that celebrates cult and classic movies and theorizes how they could be given a contemporary spotlight, this is the podcast for you. Last week, we visited Florida on our road trip, cinematically visiting each of the U.S. states, and on this episode, we bopped up to the Peach State. This state is the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ty Cobb, and the sisters Fanning, Dakota, and Elle. If you're in this state, you may see a brown thrasher soaring in the sky, or a white-tailed deer trotting in a meadow. Or perhaps you are smelling a Cherokee rose, named for the native tribe that inhabited this state before it became the starting point of the Trail of Tears. This state's nickname, Wisdom, Justice, Moderation, is hilariously appropriate, given the film we will be discussing since we are in Georgia, telling the tale of street smarts, Sheriff Buford, T. Justice, and copious amounts of Coors beer. Dan, have you ever had any notable run-ins with the law?
Any notable run-ins with the law? I don't know how notable my run-ins with the law have been, but John, I have had run-ins with the law. Have you?
Is that to say that there have been, but nothing that you're at liberty to speak of?
Oh, no, I can talk about it. I'll go into, I know, I quid pro quo. I figured I'd hear yours and then I'd launch into mine and we'll see if you've got me beat.
I actually haven't had very many. I will say, however, that you were present for one of my run-ins with the law when you and I were driving from, I guess, Connecticut to Massachusetts together when I was in college. I was, going a little fast on the open road, much like Bandit himself, and Smokey pulled us over, and I was like, oh, I am completely in the wrong. Give me a ticket. Do you remember that?
No, I am sure it happened because I'm guessing this happened in the spring of 2002. So, yeah.
I'm guessing spring of 2002 is all a haze for you? Or is it just that it was 21 years ago?
It was 21 years ago. And yeah, that was like right after, I remember making that trip right after I got back from a long tour, like theater tour that had been extended. And it wasn't necessarily like a pleasant theater tour. Like we were not in the most luxurious locations, or it was a worthwhile experience, especially in hindsight. But I remember coming back from that, and that was when I remember making that trip and driving up to Boston with you. I believe that was on that same trip the first time I saw Donnie Darko, just to loop in movies.
The timing makes sense. I recall also seeing Donnie Darko actually in Massachusetts. I went to a Boston advanced screening of Donnie Darko.
Yeah, I did. This was on DVD.
Oh, okay. Did
when
I make
saw
you watch
it? So
it?
yeah, I was not. I believe so. I believe. I mean, I don't think it made me watch it. Might be a little strong, but highly recommended. And
was I instrumental in your
about it.
screening of Donnie Darko? It would make
yes,
sense. That
you
it
were.
was. Yeah.
You were not the first person to recommend it to me, but you were the person who showed it to me, and it was on that trip. And I think that's the only time I ever visited you at all when you were in school in Connecticut. In Philly, I was down all the time.
Yeah.
But
I
yes.
just had 1 year in Connecticut.
I was also on the road because my tour started in the beginning of September 2001.
Well, being on the road, that's what this episode is all about, my friend.
And you know what? In fact, John, my tour experience will come into our conversation because I did spend some time in Texarkana.
I'm so glad that we'll get to talk about Texarkana because I have no Texarkana experience.
No, I actually, I don't think I necessarily did like Bandit's route exactly, but I definitely traveled that stretch that he travels, that Georgia to like northeastern Texas.
Well, I also imagine that any of the roads that you would have gone on, or any bridges, I should say, were completed. For one.
Yes.
Yeah. I would at least imagine so.
Spoiler alert, and then we'll come back to my run-ins with the law, as notable as they are. I have never been in a vehicle that has jumped over an incomplete bridge, though I will say that as a child who grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard.
Were you a Dukes of Hazzard watcher?
Yes. I mean, look, it meant absolutely nothing to me when I was, like 8, that, they were driving around with a symbol of the Confederacy on their car, all that. So I just want to put that out there. I'm aware. So I didn't know that about it, but I remember watching Dukes of Hazzard, and it was like every episode they jumped their car over some type of gap. And I was like, that's the coolest thing. And with toy cars, like always would do that. Like that's what you do with your toy cars, right? You set up a ramp and you let them go and you're like, all right, can it make it? So that I did not have any run-ins with the law that necessitated a high speed pursuit.
Got it.
To be clear. No, although I was pulled over for speeding on several occasions. Mm-hmm. I have definitely been pulled over for speeding in the state of New Jersey. Okay. I have been pulled over for speeding in Washington State.
I was pulled over for speeding in Washington as well, because there's a particular stretch in West Seattle where the speed limit is way lower than you think it should be.
Oh, there are several stretches in West Seattle that are like that. It's there's many, and it's very frustrating. And you really do need to sometimes it's like impossible. There's like these steep downhill slopes, and the speed limit is like 25. And it's like, I need to like be pressing on my brake to be going 25, hard right now. So anyway, we're not talking about that. So run-ins with the law. So there's been my speeding mishaps. Let's see. I also got pulled over for making a right on red where there was a no right on red. I think my favorite run-in with the law was none of those, and it happened when I was a senior in college. Okay. In September of 1998. It was just at the beginning of the semester. And my roommate, who we talked about on the Birdcage, Jamal, aka Chiffon, it was Jamal's birthday, and we had a party. And we lived in a house that was like among the. So I went to Rutgers University and was very much involved with Cabaret Theater, which is one of the student-run theaters at Rutgers, and the house where I lived for several years was kind of like passed through, people who came through the theater company or who came through Cabaret Theater, because you didn't have to be a theater major to do theater there. And people would stop in all the time. It was that kind of place. It was that kind of house.
An open door. You knew that there was some sort of theatrics going on. Somebody being a little over the top.
Yes, somebody. Yes, only one somebody, of course. I can think of, this is not the episode for these stories, but I have so many wonderful stories of the over-the-topness.
Sure.
So we were having a party for Jamal, and I don't think it was I don't think there was an unusual volume. Also, mind you, like, we lived in a house that was not necessarily, like, specifically, it was not campus housing.
Yeah.
But it was like a block from the main drag. It was clearly like, if you live on this block, you should expect that there are college students doing college student things.
Got it.
We were a block away from the student center, College Avenue. So we had this party.
Okay.
And, you know, there were people out on the porch. It was great party. And a pair of bicycle cops came up, and, you know, all due respect to law enforcement that you know, rides bicycles. I don't mean to use the term in a demeaning way, but
To protect and serve the environment.
Indeed. Yeah, spot on.
Thank you.
And they cited us for a noise violation and said that there had been a complaint, which we thought, you know, in hindsight, was kind of bullshit, and that they were just doing this, like, at the beginning of the semester to, like, kind of lay down the law.
Set a precedent.
Set a precedent, yeah. So we had the pair of bike cops gave us the citation. So after that, we were like, okay, all right, let's break, like, nobody else on the porch. You know, it's like, it's okay. Like, if you want to sit out there and smoke your Marlboro Ultralight and sip your Ice House beer. I think we were already past Zima at that point.
Yeah.
Go for it. Or you sip your Coors Light, but no. It wasn't a lot of Coors Light at those parties. I feel like I remember the type of beer. There's a lot of Red Stripe, and I remember this, like, honey brown ale. I forget exactly what it was called, but I remember that was, like, a big one.
I can picture the bottle.
Because it was like, yeah, it was an inexpensive, not shitty beer.
It gave the impression of being a classier beer.
Yes,
but was still pretty cheap.
We were a step up from your standard.
You were a
party.
Sierra Nevada. You know, that's the kind of world that you were in.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. I was on my way. I was on that.
You're
path.
on your way.
So we do that, and then I'm told that there is another pair of bicycle officers, law enforcement officers.
8 wheels in total.
Now, I don't remember which time it was, and this was long enough ago. This is 25 years ago, over 25 years ago. So I feel comfortable sharing that I was indulging in a bit of the cannabis that evening. And it came to a point where when the cops arrived, we had to decide which one of the people who lived in the house was able to pull it together enough to talk to the cops and also talk to them reasonably and not make things worse. I don't know that it took much time for me to be chosen as tribute. And, rightfully so, because I could also manage to kind of rein myself in when I was stoned. Usually, at least at this time I don't think I was.
At least as far as you can, believe about yourself. You know, maybe you and your friends thought so when you were, 21, but in hindsight, perhaps maybe it wasn't as easy to fool people.
Yeah, no, it certainly depends. There were definitely times when we were fooling nobody, but I think this time, I also don't remember. Yeah, I was not far gone. So talked to the cops, had another noise violation. We were the same story, someone called and we were but we already got. So Now, also, right around this time, I think maybe earlier that week, which maybe makes me seem awful for partying, our father had triple bypass surgery.
Oh, yes,
like
yes.
emergency surgery. It was that it was right. I think it was like right around. It was that time. It was either like right before or right after, because I remember I didn't tell him about it. And so for those new to the podcast, John and I are brothers. Mm-hmm. Our father is an attorney. And so when there's legal issues, naturally, we talk to him about them. And
you say we. I have never had to do such a thing.
Oh, have you never gone to court with Dad?
No, I have not.
Oh, those are my those were like honestly like bonding moments.
Lovely.
I know that sounds it sounds weird, but he knows what I'm talking about. So I did not want to tell Dad, who was, I believe, in the hospital recovering.
A noise violation. So silly.
And I remember the court for this one it was like off the side of Route 1 out by New Brunswick.
Okay.
Like in the police station. It wasn't like I've never been in front of a judge at like, a major court. Like I've not been in front of like a Grisham judge. Like
no,
it's never gotten to that point.
It's never gotten that sweaty.
But no, so I think that pretty much encapsulates
your run-ins with Smokey.
My run-ins with Smokey, my days as
be they behind a wheel or handlebars. Your run-ins with Smokey were a little tame.
Bandit had some assistance along the way.
Shall we synopsize Smokey and the Bandit in 1977 and get into it?
Let's do it. Let's hit the road.
Wealthy father-son duo Big and Little Enos Burdett are planning a big party in Georgia and only want the finest of refreshments. Unfortunately, coveted Coors beer cannot be legally transported east of the Mississippi. Knowing that the wealthy are above the law, they pay a local trucker named Bandit to drive to Texarkana, Texas, fill his rig to the brim with cases of Coors, and drive back to Georgia all in 28 hours. Bandit, who is always down for a challenge, enlists his pal Cletus Snow to drive the truck. Meanwhile, Bandit will drive a speedy Trans Am to distract the police from other highway activity. Just after loading the truck with beer, Bandit encounters a hitchhiking runaway bride named Carrie, who quickly becomes a fixture in his passenger seat. Carrie, aka Frog, is spunky, cute, and on board for Bandit's hijinks. Unfortunately for Bandit, the wedding Carrie ran away from was between her and the son of Texarkana's sheriff, Buford T. Justice, a relentless lawman who is as fiery as his son is dumb. With Buford and Junior on his tail, Bandit's journey back to Georgia becomes a series of high-speed vehicular shenanigans. Now, Dan, on our episode, our Colorado episode, I cracked a can of Coors Light. And man, oh man, did I regret that, because it was nasty. So I figured that on today's episode, I will crack my can of Polar Seltzer, but I put a little tag on it. Illegal Coors beer. Oh yeah,
illegal
there it is.
Coors beer.
Illegal Coors beer. So if Buford T. Justice walks through the door, I'm out of here. This podcast is over, man.
Oh yeah, he'll get all steamed and like smoke will be coming out of the ears.
Yeah, so
which I imagine actually happens by the third one. I'm sure we'll get to the sequels, but
I watched both of the sequels and I wrote little synopses for each of them, which are both I think longer than the one for the first one. I probably should have just cooled it, but be that as it may, here we are. So Burt Reynolds is Bo, the Bandit Darville. Sally Field is Frog. Jerry Reed is Cletus, the Snowman Snow. Jackie Gleason is Smokey, a.k.a. Sheriff Buford T. Justice. And his son, Junior, is played by Mike Henry. And then as Big and Little Enos, we have Pat McCormick and Paul Williams, the incredible Paul Williams. I love Paul Williams. I love that he, well, probably around this time is when he wrote like the Rainbow Connection. He was like an amazing songwriter and composer, and then he's like little Enos Burdett in all three of the Smokey and the Bandit movies.
The Paul Williams filmography is just so many like random jumps.
Absolutely, and he's still acting. Like, he's still around. He's amazing in Phantom of the Paradise. I don't know if we've talked about that much on this podcast, but certainly, an amazing movie. Probably my favorite Brian De Palma movie.
I know we've talked about it in the past. I don't think we've talked about it recently.
Right.
But yeah, so it probably not my favorite Brian De Palma movie, but it's one of his that I like remembering exists, and that I like remembering is one of his. I think it's one of his. I think for Brian De Palma, what I like about it in terms of Brian De Palma's filmography is it really stands out, and it's a lot more. Brian De Palma's movies are fun, but Phantom of the Paradise, like I kind of wish that Brian De Palma took more like risks.
Just got weird from time to time.
Right, and Phantom of the Paradise really, I mean, Brian De Palma gets weird, but Phantom of the Paradise feels like it has a lot more voice and originality, whereas other, and I know this is trite, but whereas other films of his feel like they are more pastiche, they're taking from other filmmakers and notably Hitchcock and was it Eisenstein with the staircase sequence in Untouchables.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So anyway, Paul Williams is fantastic.
Paul Williams is fantastic. And I just checked, and it was the year before this that he wrote the score and lyrics for Bugsy Malone. And Rainbow Connection was 1979. So just shortly after this. So yeah, he's such an interesting guy, and I have so much respect for him, and I'm glad that he's still out there doing it. He was in Baby Driver pretty recently. He's just still active. It's great. So, Dan, I've got some things that I wanted to discuss, but do you want me to talk about parts 2 and 3 first, or do we want to just settle on the original for a little bit?
Let's settle on the original for a little bit.
Okay. So this movie, I mean, it's really just a series it's just one extended car chase, really, with little like beats, little moments here and there where, you just kind of get a moment to relax a little bit. There's a little comedic moments, like when he's getting the burgers and stuff, and runs into Buford Justice, who doesn't know that he's the bandit. And, so it's really just like excitement, funny moment, excitement. And it's really fun to watch. I mean, there's a reason why this is a classic, and the chemistry between Burt Reynolds and Sally Field is so strong. I mean, it makes perfect sense that the two of them were in this relationship, from this time for quite a while. And, Sally Field is just so charismatic, and you see her on screen and you're just like instantly like, yes, I am on board for this character, for this, whatever this is, to become whatever it needs to be. And it's just lovely. Dan, did you have fun watching it?
I had a lot of, I'm agreeing entirely with you. In fact, and I'm looking because I feel like Sally Field at this point had already been established, but I feel like this is where she's reinventing herself, because Norma Ray is 79, I think, and like she wins the Oscar for Norma Ray. She's like, I'm trying to remember what she had done before Smokey and the Bandit. I'm just looking her up.
Well, she did Gidget and the Flying Nun, and she did a lot of like those, where she's. It's cute. But then
but she did a lot of that. I feel like in that was like the 60s.
Yeah.
So
on film, you have in 76 is Stay Hungry. 67 is The Way West. with Kirk Douglas, Robert Mitchum. The same year as Smokey and the Bandit, we have Heroes, which is another like road movie. I don't know, Dan, have you seen Heroes? I watched it pretty recently.
No,
Henry
I've
Winkler
never
and
seen it.
Harrison Ford. Yeah, it's this guy
No.
comes back from the war, and I don't remember the full details about it, but it's kind of like it's a road movie, and it's one of those early Harrison Ford roles where, I mean, this is the same year as Star Wars, and it's just this fresh Harrison Ford who isn't the established actor that we all know, and he's playing kind of like a small role, and he's not
Feels like Brad Pitt. Feels like Brad Pitt and Thelma and Louise.
Totally.
Like that type of role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Exactly. And so, yeah, Sally Field, she, what else was she doing in television aside from like Flying Nun and Gidget?
She did Sybil.
Yeah. She was doing a lot of television work leading up to Smokey and the Bandit.
Right. But it
Or
feels like
TV
she's kind
films,
of
it
trying to
looks like.
establish. But she's trying to establish herself and, as a more serious actress, which is, Smokey and the Bandit. It maybe looks like Smokey and the Bandit was more like the palate cleanser between doing Sybil, which I believe is about schizophrenia, and Norma Ray, which, have you ever seen Norma Ray?
It's been a while. I would like to watch that one again.
I mean, especially in light of recent union actions, both
Absolutely.
in the entertainment industry.
I saw it a while ago, and
Portland.
recently I've been seeing a lot of clips, and I think that the
Yeah.
clips have been mostly coming out because of the recent like writers and actors strikes, which are now in the rear view, as it were. Yes, you were just kind of alluding to this, and Dan, you as a Seattle teacher, you were involved with the strike last year. Is that right?
I was indeed,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so the Portland public school system where I am and where my daughter goes to school has been in a strike for the past 2 weeks. So it's, it feels like lately there's been a lot of activity with unions forming and strikes being performed, which has been very effective. And it's like, yes, people need to get what they need to get.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, that's how it happens.
I mean, or that's not how it happens. That's how it sometimes has to happen.
That's how it has to happen, unfortunately. Yeah.
And that is what Norma Ray understands all too well. That's a great movie. Norma Ray is an excellent movie. Highly recommend it. And Sally Field, honestly, this is not the first time we have sung her praises. Notably, Soap Dish. We love.
I watched Soap Dish the other night just because I needed more Sally Field.
You can watch Soap at any time. When it's always on the short list whenever I'm like, I need a chuckle.
Yeah.
I just need to giggle. Soap Dish is always on the short list for that. And Sally Field is wonderful. And you know what I noticed is that there's a trend, and I know it's in Soap Dish and it's in Smokey and the Bandit, and because we've also talked about like the Sally Field things that she does.
Sure.
But something she does in Smokey and the Bandit that she also does in Soap Dish is quote unquote start to smoke.
Oh, yes.
Like obviously not being somebody who smokes or will be a smoker, but decides that this is a certain moment where they should smoke. And she does it in Soap Dish and she does it in Smokey and the Bandit.
Now I want to watch all of her movies to see if it happens any other times, because that would be so funny if that just like pops up regularly that we're just not picking up on.
I'm glad I have the behind the scenes edition of Mrs. Doubtfire, because it might be an outtake. There might be an outtake where
It could
Miranda
easily be an outtake.
It would so fit. I could totally see Miranda like start and like Pierce Brosnan saying, Miranda, when did you pick up smoking? Like 5 minutes ago.
Exactly.
So that did not sound like Sally Field. I apologize.
Right. No one is claiming
5
that
minutes
you
ago,
are
5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
She kind of does the repeat thing too.
She does a little bit. Yeah. That's her signature move. So
it's in its early phases.
Dan, I want to talk a little bit now about Jackie Gleason, because holy cow, was he so much fun in this movie? Such a weirdo. Jackie Gleason, who, I mean, obviously there was his the Honeymooners and also, I think the only other thing that I really saw him, like actually really saw him in, was like The Hustler. And I don't know how much other Jackie Gleason work I've really seen, but seeing him as this character, which is so different from his role in The Hustler, is just so much fun to watch. And something that I was thinking about, and I looked this up, and I'm not the first person to make this claim, so I want to make sure that that's clear. But the parallels between Smokey and the Bandit and the Fast and the Furious movies are pretty strong. You know, it's a lot of these anti-heroes, these criminals who we're rooting for, and the cops that we're rooting against. And in the Fast and the Furious movies, we eventually get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I can't say just Dwayne Johnson. It's always going to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as the law enforcement official who is, you know, on his tail. And of course, things go back and forth over the course of several movies. But it's funny to kind of look at the parallels between the way that he acts and the way that Jackie Gleason acts. And something that I didn't see in anybody else's, at least in text, writings about any parallels between the two, I guess, franchises, is the use of the word, and I say that in quotes, "sumbitch," because I believe that Jackie Gleason was instructed to use this word "sumbitch" because it was like Burt Reynolds' father used it and he thought that it was funny, and it became part of his character to always just be like, "I'm gonna get that sumbitch." And in the Fast and the Furious movies, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his character, like his big line is "sumbitch," to the point that and this is spoiler for Fast X, but when he comes in at the very end, I don't remember if it's like an after or mid-credit sequence or just at the end, but his character shows up after an absence where, you know, he and Vin Diesel have had a falling out, and so it's like he's not gonna be part of the thing anymore. Anyway, so he shows up and I see him and I'm just like, all right, he's gonna say "sumbitch" in 5, 4, 3, and of course he says it. It's like one of the two words he says. And I have to wonder if he got that from Buford T. Justice. If it was just like
makes sense,
acknowledging like, okay, that's the role I play in these movies, so I'm gonna pick up on some of his characteristics, and that, you know, key word.
It makes perfect sense. These are movies about car chases and fast cars and law enforcement pursuing, like you said, charismatic criminals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course.
Well,
like
in the first Fast and the Furious movie, they're stealing DVD players. Like, it's as it's as banal as Coors beer. You know, it's
right.
It's something that now we look at and we're just like, oh, you want a DVD player? Go to any Goodwill and you'll find 20 of them for $5. And like Coors beer, or if you really want to drink that, go to 7-Eleven.
You could get 20 of those for $5.
Exactly. So it is kind of funny to see how time has treated those objects in our eyes. But,
that's really, that's really funny. And it makes me think that at the end, I feel like we should have like Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, and Jerry Reed and his family, and all of them sitting out there with Coors Lights toasting to family.
Coronors. Corona and Coors mixed together.
Oh, or not just Corona.
Coors Rona. So yeah, let's talk about Jerry Reed for a second. Country singer Jerry Reed, who plays the Snowman. What'd you think of Jerry Reed?
What I think of Jerry Reed in general, or
what do you think of him in the movie?
What do I think of him in the movie? He's fun.
He's fine.
He's fun. He's fine. Like, I like the whole, like, him and the dog. That's fun. I like the scene when he, like, starts the bar fight that he's obviously going to lose.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess, like, I'm rooting for, like, I guess for me, I associate Jerry Reed with the Water Boy, where he is the evil coach. And I feel like the other associations I have with Jerry Reed are like, they're just not as positive. I can't exactly explain why. So I'm a little lukewarm on Jerry Reed, but he's fine. He's fine in this.
He's fine. My impression, because I know that he was originally supposed to just play Bandit, and I feel like he and Hal Needham must have been pretty close buds, and that's kind of probably why he's in the movie in the first place. I don't know how much acting he had done before this. I mean, clearly he's done a lot since this.
Semi-Tough. I feel like it was Semi-Tough before that.
Let me look up his filmography. Yeah, he hasn't done too much. So, well, he was in Gator, so he's been with Burt before.
Burt.
He WW in the Dixie Dance Kings. He was in an episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies and Nashville 99, and that's what he has done what he had done before Smokey and the Bandit. And then went on to do Highballin', Alice, or an episode of Alice, I should say, the movie Hot Stuff, then Smokey and the Bandit 2, and another episode of Alice, and Survivor, Smokey and the Bandit 3. Yeah, so not a ton of stuff until, I mean, he's here and there in like episodes of TV shows until really The Waterboy, which is his last movie.
To me, my impression was always that Jerry Reed was a singer first and foremost, and did movies when it was like fun for him. Maybe.
I mean, singer first and foremost, that's for sure. I mean, he wrote and performed the song Eastbound and Down for the movie, which of course, was the inspiration for the name of the HBO series with Danny McBride, which I watched recently. And oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. I love it.
I need to go back and rewatch it.
I didn't love it the first time I watched it, but then when I watched it more recently, I was like, I get it. It's so good.
Right. I feel like coming off the heels of really kind of binging Righteous Gemstones.
Well, that was the thing. I was just like, okay, I just need more Danny McBride in my life right now. And then watching Vice Principals with Walton Goggins, and it's so good.
Let's come back.
We will come back to that.
We're gonna come back to
that. So I'm just gonna quickly tell you what Smokey and the Bandits 2 and 3 were about, because you haven't seen those, right?
I haven't, but before if we're gonna move on from Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, we're not moving on from it, but I just wanted to kind of get these out of the way to kind of give more context, because Smokey and the Bandit 3. Well, I'm just because Smokey and the Bandit
Smokey
3
is the bandit.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. All
Isn't that from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So Smokey and the Bandit Part 2. All right, here's my little synopsis. On his quest to become the next governor of Texas, Big Enos Burdett finds out that the outgoing governor has arranged for a special package in Miami to be delivered to the RNC in Dallas, Texas. Big and Little Enos call upon Bandit to get the gang back together for one more high-speed delivery. Having fallen on hard times, Bandit has become a no-good drunk, so Cletus does his best to bring Bandit back to his best self. Cletus also calls upon Carrie, who had since fallen out with Bandit and gotten back together with Junior. Carrie and Cletus resurrect Bandit, and they make their way to Miami, knowing only the package number, and that they are surprised when they find that the delivery is actually a live elephant. Again, with Justice and Junior on their tails, the gang navigates the road to Dallas. Law enforcement's be damned, and that one we get Dom DeLuise. Dom DeLuise plays a veterinarian that they pick up along the way to kind of just be there for the elephant, who they find out is pregnant.
I knew it.
Yeah. So they find out she's pregnant. And of course, then you get a lot of that classic Dom DeLuise, Burt Reynolds charisma that we all know and love. And so that's a fun element to what is otherwise just a really whack movie. And you get Sally Field back, and she's clearly not having a great time making the movie, but you know what? It is what it is. And then we move on to Smokey and the Bandit 3. So in this one, the Enuses are opening a restaurant in Texas and figure that they would have a little fun before its grand opening event. They bet Sheriff Justice that he and Junior can't transport an ornamental fish from Florida to Texas. That's right. They are betting Buford T. Justice about this. They're not going to the Bandit. They're just trying to have some fun. And so, fresh off of an unsuccessful retirement, Justice has a hard time saying no to a bit of excitement and a challenge. Also, part of the bet is that if he loses, little Enos gets to turn his badge into a belt buckle. In an effort to make things more interesting, the Enuses hire Cletus to get in Justice's way. Cletus is granted permission to go by the call sign Bandit, and with the help of a runaway car dealership employee, Colleen Camp, the two zip through the highways and byways of the South, decorative fish in tow. It is just complete nonsense, but it's just like, okay, we can get Jackie Gleason to do one more. He's gonna absolutely go wild. And Dan, yes, the movie was originally called Smokey is the Bandit, but it's not called that. They renamed it because they got Jerry Reed to come back as Cletus, and they actually re-edited a lot of it to make it seem like a lot of the stuff that Justice is doing is actually Cletus. It's really weird. It's really, really strange.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not a really fun watch the way that the first one is, and yeah, it definitely loses its luster, but you get more Enos action.
How's the second one to watch? Is that one like at least fun?
Yeah. I mean, you can find the fun.
It feels like a real Major League 2, Major League 3 dip.
I think so. Yeah.
Major League 2, that's what I would say. Like, you could find something fun in it.
Right. So the reason why I wanted to talk about Smokey and the Bandit 3 is because Jerry Reed is the focal point of it, and he just cannot carry a movie. He does not have the charisma, and so much of it feels just like he's trying to be Burt Reynolds, but he'll never be Burt Reynolds. And that makes it a little hard to watch. And I think that what made Jerry Reed work and be fine in the other movies was the fact that he wasn't the focal point. You know, he was the person that helps him get on his way and helps things happen, but otherwise it just doesn't really work.
Jerry Reed, a fine sidekick, but like, and that's a good thing. Like, we need good sidekicks. Like,
we need good sidekicks.
Are important characters.
Absolutely.
Sidekicks are important characters, and it's okay to not, we can't all be Burt Reynolds. That's why Burt Reynolds made the Burt Reynolds money.
I know.
Because nobody else could be Burt Reynolds.
He was good
Not
at
even
it.
Tom Selleck, and that's probably the closest
He tried.
I've seen. Yeah. But nope. Can't be Burt Reynolds unless you're Burt Reynolds, and nope, nobody's Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. You wanted to talk a little bit more about the original. I'd love to know what you thought just about, I guess, the plot of it. It almost seems kind of shoehorned in, where it's like, I know that it was based on, a real thing where, you couldn't transport the Coors beer past a certain point. I believe that it was like the pasteurization process or something like that, where it needed to be constantly refrigerated, and they couldn't really do that at the time. So I don't know. I do like movies that are kind of ripped from the headlines, kind of. So I appreciate that it was like inspired by an actual thing.
Right. It's the plot is there. It's like, right, that part is kind of shoehorned in, and it's not just like, all right, what would make sense with what we want to do with this movie, but also what would make sense for the audience that we want for this movie. So I think just the idea, if you're making a movie like this, of this genre, a car chase movie, kind of like a more silly comedy.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're not necessarily aiming this, like, you know, this is not, you know, a Patty Chayefsky script here. So, you know, you got, all right, well, a truck full of Coors beer, getting that, you know, transporting that across state lines and dodging cops at like CB radio, especially in the 1970s.
Yeah, that was
communicating
fun.
by CB radio. Yeah, I remember we had a CB radio.
Yeah, I don't remember ever using it.
We had a CB. All right, so we had a CB radio when our father was working for the prosecutor's office in Union County, New Jersey. He had a CB in his car, and yeah, I'm sure it was used. I don't necessarily remember. We certainly never used it to like warn Bandit that there was a roadblock coming up on Route 1 and 9.
I did like how the CB was utilized to really bring together all of the kind of like, I don't know, the trucking community, I guess, just the community. CB community. Yeah. That was a cool part of it.
Well, and what I love the part with the funeral, I think was my favorite example of that.
Oh yeah.
But also that device was used both ways because the cops had that trucker radio. So I thought it was used really cleverly in that. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention how the movie does, you know, address race, because it certainly does. And, but we're definitely on the right side here, because Buford T. Justice is exposed as just kind of like a blithering racist misogynist. And especially when he's been in communication with the, you know, chief of police in this one town, or sheriff in this one town, and they've only been communicating over radio, so Justice doesn't know that he's black. And then when they end up in a whole pileup, I think this is the bridge scene after Bandit jumps the bridge, and the sheriff is you know, getting out of his car. Buford T. Justice pulls up and addresses him as boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So because he is the villain, to have that villain be, you know, racially insensitive, at the very least, it totally works. And because in the third movie, Justice is not as much of the bad guy. We're not like really rooting for him, but he's presented in that kind of way. They do make an effort to make him seem less racist. There is a scene where there is a truck of these black guys, and they are being chased and harassed by a group of Klansmen. Like,
oh
yeah, it's wild. And, you know, Justice, after that all resolves itself, you know, makes some sort of comment to just be like, yes, the KKK is bad. So they right. Almost try to like be like, okay, so what do we know about this guy is, you know, he's been a little racist before, so people aren't going to root for him now, huh? So he's got to do something to kind of flip things around a little bit. He's learned in the past few years.
It's a character arc. It's development.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes. It makes him a dynamic character.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like about this movie, and especially watching it from the 2023 perspective, where we think of things, of so many things, especially being from the Northeast, living in the Pacific Northwest, two very liberal, progressive places. And, you know, we think of this, you know, kind of like division between, you know, the quote unquote coastal elites and, you know, the Rust Belt, Bible Belt, etc. What I like about this movie is I think it more kind of, it is, I don't want to say celebrates that the kind of like energy and the vibe of the South, like in the more positive sense, but it's smarter than you think. And I wrote down, there's one one quote that I had to write it down because I was like, this is this might not always apply. I'm like, this is the type of thing that someone could really misuse, but it's when he's talking to Sally Field and, she's New Yorker, and she definitely has that like coastal elite, kind of attitude. That I'm exaggerating a bit. But when he says, when you tell somebody something, it depends on what part of the United States you're standing in as to just how dumb you are.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really like kind of insightful comment. And it's really interesting. And it was something that it was like a deeper meaning that I wasn't really expecting, because it's been a while since I'd seen this movie before.
Sure. Yeah.
And at that moment, it was like, okay, like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm glad that line is in there.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, that's pretty much like, that's the meaning that, taken out of it is that, Smokey and the Bandit it's a fun movie. It does have a good amount of heart, and it is, maybe got a few more brain cells than one might expect.
Yeah, and it's definitely a movie of its time, and
oh yes,
and that needs to be considered while watching it. But go in, get into it, have fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of elements that, make no mistake, it's 1977.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so why don't we kind of take things into the future a little bit? We talked about the sequels. That's what it is. And so in 94, there was a series of 4 made-for-TV spin-off films called Bandit Goes Country, Bandit, Beauty and the Bandit, and Bandit Silver Age. And that had Brian Bloom playing a younger version of the Bandit, so a prequel series. And the 3 original films introduced 2 generations of this is from Wikipedia, Pontiac Trans Am and the Dodge Stealth in the television movies.
Oh.
In 2016, there was a documentary called The Bandit about the making of Smokey and the Bandit. 2020 is where things, 2017, I should mention, Burt Reynolds was asked about his thoughts. This is from Screen Rant. He was asked about his thoughts on a Smokey and the Bandit recasting, and he gave George Clooney his blessing to potentially be a bandit, which is interesting. He said, that said, he also doubted the star would actually do it, and while Clooney has started lighter affairs such as Ocean's 11, he tends to focus on more dramatic material these days. I don't know. He would still do it. 2020, some interesting things happened. There is a Smokey and the Bandit TV series planned that was in development by David Gordon Green, with Jody Hill, Danny McBride, Brandon James, Seth MacFarlane, and so that's where we get our Eastbound and Down connection. So in 2020, it was announced that Peyton Reed was going to direct a movie called Eastbound and Down, which was billed as a loose remake of Smokey and the Bandit that would star Owen Wilson. But that kind of fizzled out, and then Peyton Reed did Down with Love. But yeah, there's been interest in doing other things. And Dan, I'd be curious to know, given the opportunity, what would you do?
I'm going to go the expected route here. And as previously alluded to, I would love to see a Danny McBride, Jody Hill remake of Smokey and the Bandit set in 1977.
Okay.
Not exactly like a shot for shot, word for word remake. I would remove some of the more problematic content, like Buford T. Justice being super racist. Mm-hmm. It's just not necessary. His character doesn't need that. His character's like an asshole already.
Oh yeah.
So
he's talking about going home and assaulting his wife.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, he's terrible. So I would actually, and it's funny because you could look at the cast of The Righteous Gemstones and cast it. Not that I would do that, though. For certain people, like it's almost like I would love to see Walton Goggins as Cletus.
Walton Goggins would be an amazing Cletus. And if Walton Goggins was Cletus, then I would want him to have more screen time. And yeah, I just love to see what he would do with that.
Yeah.
Playing off of a Basset Hound. Are you kidding me?
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. I would actually cast Danny McBride as Buford T. Justice.
Beautiful. Love it.
And I was thinking about different possible bandits because a lot of the choices that I thought of, I began to think like, well, they're probably too old now. Like George Clooney.
Yeah.
Too old for the Bandit now. I thought about Alden Ehrenreich, and then I immediately thought about Han Solo and thought, well, that's very, very similar. Paul Rudd would work totally fine as Bandit. Yeah, I'm sure totally. there are others that, and Paul Rudd. And I guess for Frog, Aubrey Plaza was the first person that thought to my mind that came to my mind, because like if we're gonna remake it, let's cast somebody who's not gonna do Sally Field, but who's gonna who definitely can do their thing,
right?
And is going to be like a really strong character. And I don't know, Aubrey Plaza doesn't seem to really do anything not strong,
right?
So
absolutely, I
would go to that. Now, what's interesting, I was curious. I thought about that even before I watched the movie. I thought this is how I would want to see it. Mm-hmm. I did ask ChatGPT because I was curious. I was like, if I ask artificial intelligence, will they? Is it that obvious the answer that artificial intelligence will say the same thing? Now, one of the casting choices that I considered, actually a couple of them came up in the ChatGPT, this is what it had to say. Casting for a remake of Smokey and the Bandit would depend on the director's vision, but some modern actors who could potentially fit the roles include Chris Pratt as Bandit, John Cena as Buford T. Justice, and Zac Efron as Snowman. However, casting choices often evolve to create a fresh take on casting on classic films. I thought about Pratt for about a second and just thought there are other actors who have more, like Paul Rudd has more of the qualities of that character. If I'm picking between those two.
Yes. Also, and maybe I'm in the minority on this, but like, I'm done looking at Chris Pratt.
Well, yes, I'm there too. I was trying to be objective. Subjectively, yes, I'm over Chris Pratt. And I also, what was funny is I thought about John Cena, but not for Buford T. Justice. And the reason why I actually think that's a poor choice is Buford T. Justice should only be intimidating because he's loud and has a badge.
Right.
And one of the things I like about that scene with the burgers is how he just gets that sloppy sandwich and just shoves it, and you're just like, oh, that's between the way he eats and his anger, his heart's just gonna explode.
Oh, absolutely.
So I felt like this is why we should not empower AI too much, because John Cena as Buford T. Justice would be a poor choice. And I enjoyed John Cena in movies, but I don't think this is a movie for somebody who's jacked. Sorry. No. And I mean, and that's not the reason why I wouldn't cast Zac Efron in this, but again, it's just not a great fit. And that's why, even for Bandit, I wouldn't go with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I wouldn't go with John Cena. Yeah. I would want to go with somebody who has that physicality, somebody who looks like they're going to be comfortable sitting in a car for long periods of time, especially a small sports car. And if you're 6'5" and jacked, sitting in a small sports car is not going to be comfortable. There's a reason why they all drive SUVs.
Exactly.
They can fit in them.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah.
So, John, what would you do?
Okay, so mine would be a sequel, and I wrote it all out, so I'm just going to read it to you. It's 1996, and Little Enos is running for president as a fourth party candidate. His affiliation is with the Party, and their major platforms are pro-drinking, pro-driving fast, and anti-police. In an effort to make Clinton, Dole, and Perot look like fools at the final debate, Little Enos needs to find someone to transport 3 packages, one for each candidate, to the debate that will force them all into giant gaffes. For Bill Clinton, it's a joint in Little Rock with his DNA on it. For Dole, it's a scandalous photo of him with the drag queen at the end of the birdcage who says that he's gorgeous at the wedding, which is in Miami. And for Perot, who is literally from Texarkana, and Dan, we'll get back to the fact that you've been there, it's a video of him purchasing guns illegally, which Ross Perot was, very much against, weapons. I think mostly like assault weapons stuff. He calls upon his full-time fixer, Bandit, to retrieve the objects and bring them to the debate in San Diego. Naturally, he picks up a hitchhiker who is on the run from something very 90s. Maybe it is...
Is it OJ?
No.
You said on the run and very 90s. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, maybe it's like the maybe running from the marriage to the heir of the koosh ball fortune or something like that. But anyway, so he starts the trip by wronging the wrong cop, Samuel L. Justice, and who is a cop on the verge of getting canned, who is set on catching Bandit so he can save his own job. Along for the ride is his daughter, since it's take your kid to work day. So I felt like, okay, I think that the obvious Samuel L. Justice would be Samuel L. Jackson, but I kind of just like the name Samuel L. Justice, but maybe put it in somebody very different. I was thinking like Russell Crowe, who I think Russell Crowe as a justice, would be
great.
Yeah.
Great casting. I would love to. Oh, man, talk about a reunion. Russell Crowe's Buford T. Justice and Ryan Gosling as Bandit.
Well,
and I know Ryan Gosling has done... Yeah,
that's not where I was going, because this is a sequel.
No.
And,
Yes.
while I was watching Smokey and the Bandit, do you know who Burt Reynolds really reminded me of, especially like in his face? Pedro Pascal.
Oh,
so I say you kind of age up Pedro Pascal. Historically speaking in film, we have so many white people playing not white characters. Let's have a not white person playing a white character.
That should not even, no, all you need to know is that Pedro Pascal also has the right physical, he looks body.
So much like him.
And has the right sense of humor, the right demeanor,
the charisma. Absolutely,
totally see it.
Yeah,
totally.
I knew I wouldn't have to convince you.
No, well, I'm sorry. If you need any convincing, that go watch some of his work, and then if you still have a problem, well, fuck you.
Watch the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And you can just see he can do comedy. We know he can do drama. We know he can do action. He can do it all. He's great.
His SNL hosting episode was fantastic. But yes, Unbearable. Yeah, absolutely. It's just a fun movie.
Yeah, and maybe we just get Paul Williams back to do Little Enos and age him down so that he's 90s appropriate.
I mean, is Paul Williams' age?
Maybe a little bit, tiny little bit.
Yeah. I feel like Paul Williams is one of those people who doesn't age in a linear sense. Like they get older and then like Willem Dafoe, who I feel like was in his 60s in the aughts, but now is in his late 40s. He's doing great. I don't know what's like Willem Dafoe just defies all laws.
Well, Dan, if you came up to me and said, I just heard the craziest thing. Guess which actor literally became friends with Satan and has a deal to age in reverse and all stuff. And I'd be like, I don't know, Willem Dafoe. He looks like the kind of guy who'd be friends with a demon and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would just know how to communicate with the demon.
Absolutely.
That it wouldn't be that Willem Dafoe wouldn't necessarily have to be evil to be friendly with the demon. He would just he would just understand.
There would
be look deep into his
there would
his
be
soul.
an understanding. That's right.
Oh, demons don't have souls. Sorry, forgot.
Well, they have a lot, just not inside of them. They just possess them.
Right. No, they possess souls, but not within their bodies.
Yeah.
So whereas Willem Dafoe possesses the souls of millions
That's true.
within his singular body.
So, Dan, you had mentioned having been to Texarkana, Texas. I didn't want to, finish the episode without talking about that a little bit. Do you remember anything about it?
I remember it, it very flat, and yeah, I mean, it's not that honestly, like, actually the movie that we've talked about that I would say reminds me more of that area is Mud.
Well,
So,
yeah, because
like,
it's on the Arkansas border.
right, and like this, especially like the scenes outside the Walmart in Mud.
Oh, you
Like,
mean the Piggly Wiggly?
The Piggly Wiggly, right. Were they never outside of Walmart?
Nope. It was a Piggly Wiggly the whole
interchangeable.
time.
A Piggly Wiggly. But that's basically what it was.
Okay.
And it's kind of, flatland, and it's, you do wonder, you think about like, all right, well, this is some of the area that was hit the hardest by the Great Depression. And you think, well, how much did both the Great Depression and also the combination of that and like the drought, the
Yeah,
Dust Bowl,
sure.
how much of that has had ripple effects that are still impacting those areas, which are less affluent and more like people are more like kind of, just getting by.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been to Texarkana. My experiences in Texas have been pretty limited to the Austin area or like the Houston airport. Shout out George Bush. I think that's his airport.
Is that his airport?
Yeah. So, that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. I did find it very fascinating, though, while I was researching my, my idea for a sequel that Ross Perot was actually from Texarkana, which is not why I started thinking along those lines, but it was kind of just like a happy, not accident, but just like a happy discovery. Yeah. And I think that for me, I was just like, okay, what would be a fun thing to do? Like, a 20 or 30 years later thing. I was like, what's a fun event? Because I didn't want it to get too far into the future where there's cell phones and like texting or anything like that. Like, you still want it to be,
everything.
96. Yes, they existed, but nobody had them. And, and I felt like the 96 election was like such a big thing that you could do so much with it. And because we know that the Burdettes had, some political aspirations, that it would be, expected to see them kind of following along that path.
Well, and it's also, it's very much in keeping, I guess, with this franchise that it would be that's where things would go.
Totally.
Also, just interesting side note, happens to be the first election I ever voted in, the 96 presidential
Didn't
election.
you say that on like the last episode?
I may very well have done that, yes. So, once again, in case you were wondering, so I could have voted for Little Enos.
Yeah, that would have been definitely an uncharacteristic vote for you, but be that as it may.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I probably still would have voted for Clinton.
Little Enos also would have just, bought his way to that point in the election. There would have been no earning votes. It would have all been, fraud.
So you're saying he would have won?
Once an Enos, always an Enos. So Dan, what are we doing on our next episode? We're traveling away from Georgia.
Oh yeah, no, we've got a long flight here ahead of us because we're going from Georgia to blue Hawaii. Yeah, we're going back to Elvis. We're talking about Blue Hawaii. And I forget what year it's
61.
61. Thank you. I was like 63. So yeah, we're gonna see it's Elvis Presley and Angela Lansbury, and I would name other actors, but I don't know their names off the top of my head. So it's Elvis and Angela and Blue Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about Blue Hawaii. Some of the other actors in that, Joan Blackman is in that one as well. I just wanted to shout out Joan Blackman.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I'm just unprepared to name anyone in the cast other than Elvis or Angela Lansbury.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to pretend.
Yeah, we've covered Elvis before on our Love Me Tender episode. And this is...
I'm so glad that we did, by the way.
Me
so
too.
Glad. So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to talking about this, and everybody, if you're listening, you're listening because you're hearing us. Please email us, ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Check out the description of this episode for our link tree. We've got a lot of really cool stuff on our merch site, and lots of great holiday gifts as we're starting to get into that season. If you're listening to this when it comes out, which is in November. So yeah. Dan, all I have to say to you is, as you are smuggling that Coors over state lines, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.